Welcome to Insights into Books podcast, the deep dive where we cut through the noise and get straight to the heart of crucial conversations. Today, we're plunging into a book that's sparking, well, essential discussions around the world, especially for anyone deeply concerned about the well-being of young people. We're talking about Jonathan Haidt's powerful, deeply researched, and frankly pretty unsettling work, The Anxious Generation.
It really is unsettling. Haidt presents this profound argument, one that's truly difficult to ignore once you see the evidence he lays out. He contends that the significant and really rapid shift we've seen moving from a childhood that was rich in play, real-world exploration, independent activity, to one increasingly dominated by phones and digital interactions, he argues this has been nothing short of an epical disaster, that's his term, a disaster for the cognitive and social development of young people.
An epical disaster. That's a strong claim. He's not just talking about a minor setback then.
No, not at all. He's arguing it's this fundamental sweeping change that is directly responsible for the epidemic, and he uses that word, epidemic, of mental illness we're now witnessing among adolescents. He even gives this whole phenomenon a stark name, the Great Rewiring of Childhood.
The Great Rewiring, implying it's fundamentally changing how young brains are wired.
Exactly. And the consequences, as he lays them out, are far-reaching and deeply concerning.
Okay, so our mission today is to thoroughly unpack this pivotal concept to really understand the mechanics of this great rewiring. We'll explore the compelling, sometimes alarming evidence Haidt uses to support his claims. We need to understand the converging factors he identifies as the root causes these almost perfectly aligned forces. We'll break down the specific harms impacting young minds, look at the distinct gender-specific effects, how it hits boys and girls differently, and critically examine the actionable, though definitely challenging, reforms he proposes. Our goal is to equip you with insights that resonate, offer clarity, and maybe inspire some thoughtful collective action down the line. So let's get into it. Haidt isn't just working off a hunch or broad observations. He's grounding his arguments in data, hard, verifiable data. What does this evidence actually show us about adolescent mental health globally?
Well, what Haidt meticulously lays out, and this isn't just him, it's been observed across multiple nations, is this dramatic almost, well, he calls it hockey stick-like increase in mental health issues among adolescents. When you look at the graphs he presents, it's not a slow creep up. It's a sharp, unmistakable upward curve. And it starts quite suddenly.
When exactly? What's the time frame he pinpoints?
Specifically from the early 2010s. So roughly between 2010 and 2015, that window, that's when you see this alarming surge in rates of anxiety, depression, self-harm, and tragically even suicide rates, particularly in the United States, but elsewhere too.
And crucially, this isn't just kids saying they feel worse on surveys, right? Because that can be subjective.
Exactly. That's a key point he stresses. It's not solely based on self-reported data, which, can be influenced by awareness or willingness to report. It's corroborated by hard, undeniable behavioral metrics. We're talking about significant increases, statistically impossible to ignore, in hospitalizations and emergency room visits for non-fatal self-injury. And this is across young age groups, particularly 10 to 14-year-olds and 15 to 19-year-olds.
So these are actual actions, actual severe distress leading to medical intervention.
Right. These aren't opinions. These are direct, irrefutable indicators of severe psychological distress. It's a genuine crisis playing out in ERs and psychiatric wards.
That's a chilling picture, and what's really striking, as Haidt points out, is that this isn't just an American phenomenon, is it? It's not unique to the U.S.
Absolutely not, and that's critical to his argument. This mental health crisis is unequivocally multinational. It's been observed, documented in at least 15 countries. It's particularly prominent in English-speaking nations, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, but also significantly in Nordic countries like Sweden, Norway, Finland.
So similar patterns, similar timing.
Yes, very similar, sharp and significant increases in adolescent mental health issues, following essentially the same timeline, that early 2010s takeoff. And further reinforcing this global reach, there are worldwide surveys, like the OECD's PISA program, looking at 15 and 16-year-olds. They show a significant widespread increase in reported school loneliness across a staggering 37 countries.
Wow. So it's not just isolated incidents or something tied to one nation's politics or economy.
Precisely. It's a pervasive global phenomenon, and it seems synchronized in its onset.
And another crucial piece of the puzzle you mentioned earlier is the gender disparity. The impact hasn't been even across boys and girls. How does that break down?
That's entirely correct, and it's a really critical clue for Haidt. The crisis has disproportionately affected girls. Their rates of anxiety, depression, and especially self-harm have shown much steeper, more dramatic increases compared to boys. In some datasets, you see girls tips for things like ER visits for self-harm, tripling or even quadrupling since 2010.
Tripling or quadrupling, that's staggering.
It is. Whereas boys' rates, while still significantly up, I mean, we're talking increases of 50% to 150% depending on the measure, so it's serious for them too. Their trajectory often appears a bit smoother, maybe starting slightly earlier, perhaps around 2009, 2010.
So the pattern is different. Why is that difference so important for his theory?
Because this difference in impact, these distinct patterns, provides a vital clue for understanding the underlying causes. It suggests specific mechanisms might be at play, affecting girls and boys differently through the digital world.
Okay. So when you put all that evidence together, the sharp timing, the global scale, this stark gender disparity, Haidt contends that no other proposed theory adequately explains this precise convergence. He seems to really challenge the alternative explanations.
He does, quite systematically. He goes through the common explanations people might point to and argues why they don't fit the facts. For instance, the global financial crisis of 2008-2009, the timing just doesn't work.
House.
Well, the economy was actually showing signs of improvement, recovery was underway, when adolescent mental health began its sharp decline in the early 2010s. If it were solely the economic crisis, you'd expect the mental health impact during or immediately after 2008-2009, not years later during a recovery phase.
Okay, that makes sense. What about other big societal stressors?
Hmm?
Climate change, political polarization, those certainly affect young people.
They do, and Haidt acknowledges they are stressors. But he points out that historically, major societal threats often have a paradoxical effect. They can pull people together, foster a sense of community, collective purpose. Think of wartime, for example. Sociologists like Emil Durkheim even observed that suicide rates could decrease during such times.
Interesting. So crises don't always lead to worse mental health.
Not necessarily in that direct way. And he notes that political activism, surprisingly, actually correlated with higher mental health up until around 2010-2012. That trend has now completely reversed. Even the timeline for major climate activism, like Greta Thunberg's movement starting in 2018, that postdates the initial mental health surge by several years. It can't be the trigger for the 2010-2015 rise.
So his challenge to critics is basically, find me another explanation that fits all these pieces, the timing, the global reach, the gender pattern.
Exactly. Offer a coherent alternative theory that convincingly explains all those elements simultaneously. While some critics might point to, say, the recent pandemic lockdowns, Haidt argues those acted as exacerbations on a crisis already well underway. The foundations, he contends, the Great Rewiring, were already firmly laid well before COVID-19 hit the scene.
It certainly sounds like he's built a very tight, data-driven case for when and where the crisis hit. So if that's the grim reality, let's get to his explanation. The Great Rewiring of Childhood. You said it's a convergence of two powerful but opposite forces. What are they?
That's the core of his argument. The first force is what he calls overprotection in the real world. He also uses the term safetyism. This describes a big cultural shift where parents, schools, society in general have become increasingly risk-averse. We meticulously limit children's opportunities for unsupervised play, for exploration, for taking independent risks.
You mean like kids used to walk to school alone or play outside until dark without constant adult eyes on them?
Precisely. Think about those common anecdotes from older generations roaming the neighborhood freely, riding bikes for miles, navigating small conflicts without adult intervention. Contrast that with today's often highly scheduled, heavily supervised, almost bubble-wrapped childhoods. This pervasive safetyism, he argues, while well-intentioned,
Actually prevents kids from developing crucial life skills.
exactly. It hinders the development of resilience, problem-solving skills, and what Haidt, borrowing from Nassim Taleb, calls anti-fragility.
Anti-fragility, what does that mean in this context?
It's the idea that some systems, including humans, don't just resist stress, they actually get stronger from experiencing it, up to a point. He uses the analogy of muscles and bones. If you never stress your muscles, they atrophy. Never put weight on your bones, they get brittle.
Okay, so like physical development needs stress.
Right. And he argues emotional and social development follows a similar principle. If kids are shielded from all conflict, minor failures, social bumps and bruises, their emotional muscles don't develop properly. They lack the practice needed to cope with real adversity later on.
So this overprotection keeps them in a kind of defensive crouch.
He calls it a constant defend mode, always scanning for potential dangers, threats, what not to do. This can breed anxiety and a kind of learned helplessness. It's the opposite of a discover mode, which encourages exploration, taking chances, engaging in those low-stakes practices like falling off your bike and getting back on that, build real confidence and competence.
Okay, so that's the overprotection in the real world. What's the second opposing force?
The second force is underprotection in the virtual world, happening at the exact same time. Children have been given virtually unrestricted, often unmonitored, access to the vast, commercially driven online world via smartphones and social media. And it's crucial, he stresses, to see these technologies not as neutral tools like a hammer or a book.
But as something designed with specific psychological effects in mind.
Precisely. They are ingeniously designed by teams of experts to be highly addictive and, ironically, despite the social label, often deeply socially isolating. He uses the phrase, "we're forever elsewhere," to capture that state, physically present, maybe, but mentally absorbed online, disconnected from the here and now.
And how does that bypass normal development?
The core argument is that critical brain systems, essential social skills, the scaffolding of human development they're meant to develop through synchronous in-person embodied interactions. Think about reading facial expressions, hearing tone of voice, laughing together, navigating real-time social cues. That rich, complex, embodied feedback loop.
Which online interactions often lack.
Right. Online stuff is often asynchronous, you post, they reply later. It can be superficial, filtered, lacking true presence. It bypasses that vital developmental process. And the key shift wasn't just having phones, but the move from basic flip phones around 2010, used mainly for calls, maybe texts, to the explosion of smartphones by 2015. Suddenly, you have high-speed internet, front-facing cameras, and viral, addictive social media apps right in every kid's pocket, 24/7. That, he argues, was the game changer.
Okay, so those two forces, overprotection offline, underprotection online, create the great rewiring. And Haidt identifies 4 specific foundational harms that stem directly from this phone-based childhood. Let's break those down. What's the first one?
The first foundational harm is social deprivation. Despite being constantly connected, young people are experiencing profound reductions in face-to-face interaction. This leads directly to feelings of loneliness and isolation, even when surrounded by hundreds of online friends.
Because the online interactions just aren't the same quality.
Exactly. They often fall short. They lack the depth, the reciprocity, the nuance needed to build truly strong social bonds, the kind essential for healthy development. And this creates that social trap we mentioned earlier.
Right, where everyone feels they have to be online because everyone else is.
Yes. Even if they find it unsatisfying or even anxiety-provoking, it becomes a collective action problem. No one wants to be the first to log off and risk social exclusion. He cites this striking study where college students were actually willing to pay money to have everyone's social media accounts shut down temporarily, including their own.
Wow. They'd pay to escape. That really shows the pressure.
It highlights the coercive nature of it, the feeling of being trapped.
Okay, social deprivation. What's the second major harm? This one seems more biological.
Second is widespread sleep deprivation. The constant presence of screens, especially in bedrooms, especially before bed, severely disrupts natural sleep patterns. The blue light messes with melatonin production, the hormone that tells your body it's time to sleep.
And the content itself is stimulating, right? Not exactly winding down.
Exactly. Endless scrolling, notifications, videos. It keeps the mind buzzing when it should be calming down. And this isn't just about feeling tired. Chronic sleep deprivation has huge negative impacts on cognitive function, emotional regulation, learning, memory, overall mental health. Sleep is fundamental.
And kids see adults doing it too, checking phones constantly.
Right. It normalizes these unhealthy habits, making it incredibly hard for young people to establish good sleep routines when the devices are always there, always calling.
Okay, number 3. This one feels very relevant to anyone trying to get work done or study these days. Attention.
Third, and this is a huge one, attention fragmentation. The constant barrage of notifications, alerts, the rapid-fire nature of content, especially short-form video like TikTok. It profoundly impairs the ability to focus, to concentrate deeply on sustained tasks.
It trains the brain for distraction.
Essentially, yes. It leads to what some call continuous partial attention. You're always scanning, taking in bits and pieces, but rarely giving your full, undivided attention to any one thing. And this is tied into dopamine, but maybe not in the way people usually think.
How so? Isn't dopamine just the pleasure chemical?
Not exactly. Haidt emphasizes it's more of a motivational neurotransmitter. It drives the desire, the seeking behavior. It creates that urge check the phone again, watch one more video. It drives the loop. Think of the feeling before you get the notification, the anticipation. That's dopamine driving you.
Okay. And how does that relate to brain development?
Critically, dopamine release creates, as Haidt puts it, windows of superplasticity. When dopamine fires, the brain wires itself rapidly based on what caused that firing. So the developing brain is being intensely shaped by these quick-hit platforms, reinforcing pathways for instant gratification and constant novelty seeking.
While the pathways for deep focus and patience get weaker.
Precisely. They're neglected. And we see the results. He talks about college students struggling with basic tasks requiring sustained effort, a kind of learned helplessness. Teachers see it too. Students physically present but mentally checked out, unable to focus for long periods.
That's concerning. Okay, the fourth harm, addiction.
Fourth is addiction. Plain and simple. Social media platforms, online games, they're deliberately engineered using sophisticated behavioral psychology to deliver constant, unpredictable dopamine hits. This creates obsessive-compulsive loops that are incredibly difficult to break, even when the activity isn't really enjoyable anymore.
He compares it to a casino, right?
Yes, a very strong analogy, designed to keep you in. No clocks, constant new stimuli, variable rewards the most addictive kind. Algorithms are constantly tweaked to maximize your engagement time because that's how they make money.
And this leads to his point about the medium versus the content.
Exactly. Even if you could magically remove all harmful content, the bullying, the explicit material, the misinformation, the medium itself, he argues, is the problem for developing brains. A childhood spent constantly performing for likes, comparing yourself to perfected images, engaging in shallow, asynchronous interactions that fundamentally rewires the brain in unhealthy ways.
It hijacks our natural desires for connection and status.
Right. It delivers them in a super-stimulus form, like junk food. It bypasses the slower, harder, but ultimately more rewarding work of real-world relationship building, skill development, and identity formation. The brain gets wired for the easy hit, making real life seem less appealing.
This brings us back to the gender differences. Haidt argues these harms manifest differently for boys and girls. He uses that metaphor of a trap with different bait. Can you explain that?
Yes, it's a powerful way to visualize it. A trap needs bait to attract the target, and then mechanisms to keep them stuck. For girls, he argues the bait is often their inherent interest in social dynamics, relationships, and visual presentation.
Things amplified by platforms like Instagram or TikTok.
Exactly. Image-heavy platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, TikTok, Tumblr, they tap directly into these interests. Social comparison, relational dynamics, appearance, it's all hyper-magnified there. Once girls take this bait, they get trapped by the intense fear of missing out, FOMO, the constant pressure to curate a perfect online persona.
And this leads to specific harms for them.
Yes. Things like constant visual social comparison with idealized, often digitally altered images leading to body image issues, an unhealthy drive for perfectionism, spending hours editing photos. Also, relational aggression, cyberbullying, which can be relentless online, and emotional contagion, where anxiety or depression symptoms can spread through online friend groups. He mentions heartbreaking anecdotes of young girls worried about their weight at incredibly young ages.
So the platforms exploit and distort natural female social tendencies. What's the bait and trap for boys?
For boys, Haidt suggests the bait often revolves around themes of war and sex. They're naturally drawn to multiplayer video games, especially first-person shooters, simulating conflict and competition, and also to easily accessible pornography.
And these provide a different kind of gratification.
Yes, these digital pits, as he calls them, provide instant affectance. That's the satisfying feeling of being a cause, having an impact, mastering a system like winning a battle in a game. It taps into innate male interests in systems, competition, and agency.
But this fast satisfaction comes at a cost.
A huge cost. It fundamentally short-circuits the slow, hard work needed for real-world social development, especially around relationships. Think about dating and courtship. Learning those complex social skills requires practice, vulnerability, navigating rejection, building real connection. It's hard work.
And the digital world offers shortcuts.
Exactly. The immediate availability of pornography, for instance, can provide sexual gratification without any need to develop the skills for real-world intimacy, flirting, or relationship building. Similarly, spending hours mastering a video game world can feel more rewarding and less risky than navigating the complexities of real-life social hierarchies or challenges. This can lead to social isolation, stunted emotional development. Many young men report feeling trapped by porn addiction. desperate but unable to form healthy real-world relationships.
So it rewires them away from the effort needed for real connection.
Precisely. He brings in Simon Baron-Cohen's work on empathizing versus systemizing, suggesting boys might naturally gravitate more towards systems. These digital platforms offer supercharged systems to master, providing that dopamine hit of affectance. It bypasses the messy, difficult, but essential slow work of building real social competence, especially during that critical 9-15 sensitive period for identity and learning. The brain gets wired for the digital reward, making the real world feel less compelling, reinforcing the retreat.
Okay, so the picture Haidt paints is pretty bleak, but he doesn't just leave it there. He proposes clear, actionable solutions. But he emphasizes, crucially, that we're stuck in a collective action problem. Why is that collective aspect so vital?
It's absolutely fundamental because individual action, while good, often isn't enough to overcome the pervasive social pressure. Think about that parent trying to hold off on giving their kid a smartphone when all the other kids in the class have one. The kid's plea, "But Mom, I'm the only one," is incredibly powerful.
It creates social isolation, which is exactly what kids fear.
Exactly. No parent wants their child to be ostracized. So even parents who have reservations often feel forced to give in. It's a classic collective action problem or social trap. To escape it, we need new, widely accepted social norms. Norms that parents, schools, tech companies, and maybe even governments adopt together. It has to become the new default.
So what are these new norms Haidt proposes, his 4 foundational reforms?
Right. 4 big shifts to try and renormalize childhood. The first reform is no smartphones before high school. He specifies age 14.
Why 14?
Because the brain, especially the prefrontal cortex dealing with impulse control and judgment, is still rapidly developing during those middle school years, that 9-15 sensitive period we keep mentioning. He argues young teens are just not equipped to handle the constant distraction and stimulation of a smartphone. He advocates for basic flip phones or maybe smartwatches, tools for communication and safety, but without the full internet browser and addictive apps. He points to groups like Wait Until 8th, where parents pledge together, creating a supportive community.
Making it easier for individual families to hold the line.
Exactly. And he notes many parents who delay report positive outcomes, even eventual gratitude from their kids.
Okay, no smartphones before 14. What's the second reform? It targets social media specifically.
Yes. The second is no social media before 16. He's really emphatic about this. He argues social media is simply wildly inappropriate for children. It exposes them to addiction, constant social comparison, the pressure to be a brand, all during a highly vulnerable developmental stage. He argues there's basically no way to make social media safe for minors, even with content moderation, because the medium itself, the constant performance, comparison, dopamine loops, is the core problem for developing brains.
So this would require much stronger age verification by the platforms.
Absolutely. Real verification, not just clicking a box saying you're old enough. It requires enforcement. The goal is to protect kids during that crucial sensitive period where exposure can have lasting effects on their neural real estate, as he puts it. He mentions the risk of kids stumbling onto incredibly harmful content through algorithms. The gauntlet idea reinforcing the need for protection during these vulnerable years.
Makes sense. Reform number 3 takes aim at schools.
The third reform, phone-free schools. And this one is gaining momentum globally. The argument is simple. Schools should be environments for learning, focus, and real in-person social interaction, not constant digital distraction. Removing phones from the classroom and even hallways helps students focus, improves attention, and encourages actual conversation during breaks.
And teachers are seeing benefits.
Overwhelmingly. Teachers report better engagement, less distraction, fewer cyberbullying issues during school hours, and just a generally improved learning atmosphere when phones are put away, maybe collected in pouches or kept in lockers all day.
Okay, so we've taken away the smartphones, delayed social media, cleared phones from schools. What fills that space? That's the 4th reform, right? The counterbalance.
Exactly, and arguably the most important counterbalance. The 4th reform is more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. If we're reducing screen time, we absolutely must replace it with rich, engaging real-world experiences. This means actively encouraging unsupervised outdoor play, letting kids take age-appropriate risks, getting them involved in their communities.
Building that anti-fragility again.
Precisely. These activities build resilience, confidence, social skills. It means promoting third spaces, parks, libraries, community centers, where teens can hang out without constant adult oversight. Learning to navigate social situations independently. It also means encouraging real-world responsibilities, Part-time jobs like babysitting or working locally, learning to use public transport, driving, having meaningful chores at home.
It sounds like bringing back some aspects of a more traditional childhood before screens took over.
Very much so. It even includes the idea of a regular digital Sabbath, deliberately disconnecting from tech to focus on people, nature, slower activities. It's about reconnecting kids, and maybe adults too, with the physical, embodied world, bringing childhood back down to earth.
It really does sound like a comprehensive blueprint, not just for kids, but maybe for all of us. So how has the book, The Anxious Generation, actually been received since it came out? That's certainly made waves.
It really has. It garnered huge attention almost immediately. Became hashtag one New York Times bestseller. Got endorsements from very prominent figures like Oprah, various state governors. It clearly resonated with a lot of people. And that attention has translated into real-world action, or at least serious discussion. We're seeing legislative efforts pop up Australia, considering age restrictions for social media, ongoing debates in the U.S. Congress around bills like KRSA, the Kids Online Safety Act. It's definitely catalyzed a major conversation.
But as with any big, bold thesis, it's faced pushback too, right? Not everyone agrees with Haidt's diagnosis or his primary focus on technology.
That's correct. It hasn't been without criticism, particularly from some academic circles. Some argue that while the youth mental health problem is real, Haidt might be overstating the role of technology, or that his interpretation of the data is too focused. Critics might say the causal links aren't definitively proven, correlation isn't causation, that old chestnut. They might point to other factors, poverty, school shootings, climate anxiety, political turmoil, suggesting Haidt oversimplifies a complex issue.
Or that he's maybe cherry-picking data that fits his narrative.
That charge is sometimes made, that he emphasizes correlation too strongly, perhaps downplaying other contributing factors or alternative interpretations of the trends.
And how does Haidt respond to that? What's his counterargument?
Well, Haidt and his supporters push back pretty strongly. They maintain the evidence is robust, especially the timing and the international consistency, and that urgent action is warranted even if every causal pathway isn't perfectly mapped. He often argues that critics focus too narrowly on metrics like screen time hours, which misses the bigger picture, the fundamental transformation of childhood, the loss of play, the changes in sleep and attention. And he consistently comes back to that challenge. If it's not the great rewiring, what is the alternative theory that explains the specific timing, the global reach, and the gender disparity so precisely? He argues critics haven't offered a compelling one.
He also points to studies where reducing social media does seem to improve well-being.
Yes, he highlights experimental evidence showing mental health benefits when people, including young adults, deliberately disengage from social media for periods of time, suggesting that causal link is indeed present. Ultimately, the debate highlights the complexity, for sure, but it also underscores this undeniable universal concern about what's happening to young people's mental health in our hyper-digital world. The conversation itself is crucial.
Absolutely. So we've taken a really deep dive today into Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation. We've explored that alarming evidence of a youth mental health crisis, unpacked his core idea of the Great Rewiring, driven by overprotection offline and underprotection online. We broke down the 4 key harms: social deprivation, sleep loss, attention fragmentation, and addiction. And we looked at how these play out differently for boys and girls.
And Haidt's call to action is incredibly clear and maybe a little daunting. This requires collective effort. We need new societal norms. His 4 pillars: no smartphones before high school, no social media before 16, phone-free schools, and a massive reinvestment in real-world independence, play, and responsibility. The potential is there, he argues, to rewire childhood back towards something healthier, more resilient, more human, if we can find the collective will to do it.
It leaves us with a lot to think about. So here's a final thought for you, our listeners, to consider. If, as Haidt compellingly argues, our brains really are designed for that slow, hard work of real-world engagement and authentic embodied connection, what's one small, deliberate step you could take this week? A step to reclaim a little bit of your own attention, or to foster more real-world engagement for the young people in your life? What bit of anti-fragility are you, or they, waiting to build by embracing a genuine challenge, by being truly present instead of reaching for that next quick digital hit? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.